Hello, everyone, and we welcome you to our Saturday morning Bible study session. Today is April 11th, 2020, and we are recording from the North Star Cottage. And we welcome you all. Thank you for joining us. And we will start today with our moderator, Linda.
I'm going to read from Addresses by Martha Wilcox. Quote, Mrs. Eddy records her life purpose. She says, quote, my life purpose is to impress humanity with a genuine recognition of practical, operative Christian science, end quote. And she further says to us, drink with me the living waters of the spirit of my life purpose. That's from Miscellaneous, page 207. There was no doubt in Mrs. Eddy's mind that she had a definite purpose in life to fulfill, and what this definite purpose was. In order to fulfill our definite purpose and be a visible witness for truth, we should be keenly aware of our present individual existence in its higher spiritual aspects. We should be deep thinkers. We should vision happier days for the human family. We should prove that an abundant, practical life is the one eternal life at hand. We should participate in and rejoice in the present fulfillment of this present liberating dispensation, the dispensation of the coming of the Son of Man, which is the reality of all things being made visible in human consciousness. As individual Christian scientists, we need a greater love for God and a greater love for man in our hearts, in order that our sublime life purpose may be carried out into effect. Each one of us has a sublime task to perform. We should so live and so love that God or truth is made comprehensible to us, and that we may hear his voice saying, this is the way, walk ye in it. And that's Isaiah 30. End quote.
Thank you.
Okay, comments with that?
I had just one thing. The word operative, I didn't know what that meant. I looked it up. It means, when Mrs. A talks about operative, Christian science, power of acting. That's what I found.
Okay. Operative, power of acting. Thank you.
So if anybody thinks they don't have a divine purpose to their life, think again.
That's why it doesn't work without him.
Exactly.
Actually, this is an all-encompassing truth for everyone. Everyone has a purpose, a reason why they're here and doing things. So the whole idea of taking life casually or carelessly is, well, it's a sin, I feel. So something to take serious, fact that we've got something to do. We can put it in another way. Everybody's got some way of making a positive, constructive contribution to society in some way. Everybody can do at least that and get started on their purpose.
And apparently can't be hidden away while doing it because we have to be a visible witness for truth. So. Gotta be out there.
Well, and anybody who doesn't is missing out on something wonderful.
And that's why we have drug problems and other problems, because these people have not found their purpose yet. And that's all it is. That is all it is. We give it all kinds of excuses, and we can give it all kinds of excuses, but ultimately they just haven't found this purpose, and they will be prodded in many ways and it's usually suffering, and until they do. And many times, if not most times, when people come out of something like that, it's because they've found God and they're devoting their life. Thank you. To helping others find God as well. So you have been brought into this place in this time for a holy purpose. You have found your divine purpose rather than just struggling along with your human purpose, which is you're born into matter, everything's miserable, and then you die out of it. You found a divine purpose now, and you're being called upon, and you can help others by being a light to find their divine purpose as well. It's most essential. We've always taught this here about our divine purpose versus so-called human destiny, which is never pleasant. And it's not that finding your divine purpose does not mean that your life is a row of flowers, not by any means, but you have this Christ truth now to work things out with, and that's all the difference.
Plus the opportunity to do something worthwhile.
Yes. And that satisfies like nothing else can. It's the true definition of contentment and satisfaction is to find this purpose. And each one is unique. You all have different purposes. You all have a different row to hoe, so to speak. You can't do anyone else's work, nor can anyone else do your work.
And you all have dominion to meet the opposition that would try to keep you from doing what God has for you to do.
Yes. Which is what we're going to talk about next. It was what Haggai was up against. And, Mrs. Evans used to say, as far as birthdays, to know that that was the day that God put you on this earth to accomplish his will. And it's a good way to look at it.
For those of you who have birthdays.
Right. Never record ages. But we very happily had a few little babies coming to this church this week, which we're very happy about.
New members.
Our newest baby
member was born yesterday, yes.
Mm-hmm. And one a few days before that.
Yeah.
So, okay. Anyone else?
I was looking for this paper, and I just thought, this is Wilcox Wright has a, as you know, remedy for world problems. And in it, she says, perhaps the most important truth for us to understand today is that God has chosen us to live in these very years. And when I read that for the first time, I thought, yeah, I mean, we're here because we're the ones that are going to bring about the change. We're here for a purpose, each one of us, like we've been saying. But I loved how she said that, too, in that remedy for world problems with my watches. But we're here because we're the chosen ones to do this at this time. So, and so we're equipped with everything we need to do that.
Thank you very much. And that is certainly true. God has equipped us with understanding this science, and we thank God for that every day. And what a shame to waste it. Unconscionable.
And those of you who recognize that are what Jesus referred to when he said, ye are the light of the world.
I thought that was really wonderful. I didn't ever think of myself as having a specific purpose, I don't think, until I heard that.
Well, good. I'm glad then. It's an awakening because you do, and you're very needed in that purpose. As I said, no one else can do what you can do.
It's wonderful to know that God wouldn't have created us if He didn't also give us a purpose and a place at the same time.
Yes.
I love that thought.
Yeah, and so how,
And the ability. Oh, excuse me, I'm sorry.
oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and the intelligence and the understanding and all. It just gave me a feeling of, well, then I have everything I need at hand right now to do the work that God's given me to do. And that just kept, that remind every time I think, well, I don't understand something, or I'm confused, or I feel like, what can I do? Well, if I'm one of the chosen ones to be here, I've got more power than I even can imagine. Dominion
Thank
from
you.
Him to do what I need. It's just a wonderful feeling.
Thank you. That is so true. And also the health you need. You know, this is what keeps us in Plainfield going for so long. We get up in the morning knowing this. We have everything we need, and we are energized for the work, including health. And we're not to be made. We're to handle that aggressive mental suggestion daily. So, and boy, is it out there now. So we're not made to forget or neglect our duty to God, our leader, and to mankind. This is how you start your day, and you'll find you're leaping out of bed. And Gary's given testimonies, in the morning, ask yourself, God, what would you have me do today? That's how you begin to find your divine destiny, by opening your thought to the fact you have it, and then let Him direct your path. Thank you.
Yeah, this reminds me of Mrs. Eddy's statement in Miscellaneous Writings that we're an active portion of one stupendous whole, and that because of that, we are able to impart truth, health, and happiness. This is our rock of salvation and our true reason for existence.
Yes.
Very good.
I'm so glad you are remembering these statements from Mrs. Eddy, certainly, and then from other sources, and that they have lit a fire under you. It's very, very important. It keeps us awake and moving.
Absolutely. Couldn't live without them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
Matthew Henry said, Christ must reign till all enemies be put under His feet. His followers are called to this warfare, are fitted for it, and will be faithful in it.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And we're certainly being fitted, aren't we? We're being taught how to see God's creation correctly. We're also being taught not to be mesmerized by our mortal beliefs that are aggressively trying to indoctrinate us, brainwash us.
And that's all it is.
A real Christian Scientist cannot be mesmerized, cannot be hypnotized.
Yeah.
And that is the training. Yeah. And that is the dominion.
Like my practitioner said, reminded me that anything that comes to us as a so-called voice of mortal mind is all about stopping us from serving God. That's what anything that comes to us is about. It's to stop the work. And I never really looked at it that way, but when she said that, yeah, that's what it's all about. It's like,
And that's
serving Him.
yeah, the big key to keep going. And again, the alertness to duty. You're made to forget or neglect. That's all it's about. And if you see that, however it comes, and it comes in many ways, all kinds of problems tailor-made for you, physical problems, family problems, all kinds of things. If you can see it impersonally as something trying to stop the work, then it'll vanish, because that's all it is. It's wonderful.
And
it's the key to our success and happiness.
It's actually very encouraging All this air has no power. We know that. So its only hope is if he can just trick us into stopping doing it.
And go down to the valley of oh no.
And talk to it.
That's why when you're able to go on doing the work, it leaves. It's not there.
That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it hasn't stopped that, it has done nothing. Era has howled and howled, and it has done nothing, Mrs. Eddy says. And, right now I consider it, this is almost like an ark. Stay in your ark. And telling the people here, only poke your head out a few times to see if you see the turtle dove flying by. Otherwise, get back in. Don't. It's a raging sea right now, and it has no part of God's creation. So stay in the ark. Do the work. Focus on what we have to do. Don't read all these just mesmeric reports that are being paraded. Everything, all the time, 24/7. Stay in the ark.
And remember, the ark is pitched, so nothing can come in unless you go peeking your head out there.
That's right. Thank you. Okay, Linda.
All right, so today our topic is consider your ways. The Bible readings came from Haggai chapters 1 and 2 and Revelation chapters 17 and 18. And the first question is, who is Haggai and what was his clarion call?
Well, Haggai was part of the group that came back to Jerusalem after, I believe, Babylonia had fallen about, 19 years before. But they had been asked to rebuild the temple by Cyrus, who had been ruling sometime before they actually got to Jerusalem, and made it part of their mission. And Haggai apparently was older because he remembered the Temple of Solomon before it had been destroyed by Nebuchadnezzar. Anyway, his clarion call was to call the people back to working on the temple. They'd started out, built the foundations, but then they started building their own houses and businesses and forgot all about it. And he was calling them back to God again.
I want to say something. It's very interesting because I'm a granny that he was called in, they think probably his 70s to do this work. And that's very good news.
Well, and that's why your divine purpose goes on, and we don't hear there's no such thing as retirement. We have way too much to do. Way too much to do.
Mrs. Eddy founded the Christian Science Monitor when she was in her 80s. So let that be an inspiration to everybody.
That's it.
Abraham and Isaac at 99.
Mm-hmm.
Who else on who was Haggai? Go ahead, please.
Oh, I was just thinking of what Mrs. Eddy said in, I think, the article Age. There's a tendency of people when they get older. She warned us if you start thinking only of yourself, kind of like wake up. It's a tendency like when you retire. When you think about retirement, it's ridiculous. You're just gonna pull back from the world and go into your little shell and fall asleep and die. I mean, a lot of people, when they retire, sometimes they die the next day because they no longer have any purpose. Their purpose was their work. So, I mean, I can't even wrap my head around the idea of retirement. And Mrs. Eddy did warn about it, and it's just a false premise that, life is short, you work, you retire, you die. I mean, it's pretty bleak, the whole idea of retirement. But I love having a purpose that has no beginning and no end. It's just constant. It's every moment, every day. It's beautiful to feel that sense of purpose. Anyway.
Yes, we don't retire from life.
Well, that's just it. That is what is called living, as opposed to merely existing.
I remember someone talking about retire, like TIRE by itself, getting ready for what's next.
Yeah.
So anyway, all these other guys who had returned to Jerusalem, a lot of them were probably younger, who had never lived anywhere except in Babylon. They had been kind of indoctrinated into the Babylonish, idol worship and things like that. And a lot of them probably didn't have a very good education in the laws of Israel, the laws of God. And so they were complacent about the things of God. And they were more concerned about building their own houses and building up their businesses and stuff. And they needed an awakening. And Haggai was the guy to do it.
And to bring it home, this is what we see in our country, where, we've had nothing, no troubles on our main land for such a long time. It's right for people just to get self-involved and not understand what our country was founded on, which is why we had the Liberator magazine that we did this month, and to just not appreciate it or realize what went before it to establish it, and then start to seek other gods than the one God, and to rule out the one God from their lives. And so that's why we have troubles as we're seeing today. It's an awakening. That's all it is. It's nothing more than that. And I find it interesting. It's a worldwide awakening, and that's in Haggai, doesn't it? It's going to shake up the nations, shake them up. And again, God doesn't send it, but it's our own neglectfulness that seems to cause it to appear, where we're easily mesmerized because we've been so mesmerized by all the glitter of materiality. So something like this comes in and our eyes are just spinning around. Unless, as Gary said, you're a working Christian Zionist, and then you cannot be hypnotized.
Tell them what that one guy was saying about, you make a god out of Hollywood. So
Yeah, I forget who it was. It might have been somebody like Hulk. Was it Hulk?
Yeah. Hulk Hogan.
Hulk Hogan, yeah. He said, so you made a god out of Hollywood, shut down Hollywood. You made a god out of sports, shut down sports. You made a god out of church even, shut down church.
You won't worship the one Sabbath day, so I'll give you 7 of them.
Yeah, that's what I've said. Yeah, I've said that because it's all shut down now. So let's think about things and who we are and where we're going, and let's have a kinder world, and a less rushed and pressured world, and put the things of God first. I heard someone tell me in Israel, the Sabbath day, there's a total hush that comes. It's very much observed. And we used to here. It's so sad. I remember when the blue laws stopped operating. So
people now shop on Sunday instead of going to church.
Shop, plays tennis. I mean, the schools have play rehearsals. I had that with my own children years ago on Sunday mornings. I refused to let them do it. They weren't too happy about it, but I just was not gonna do it. It was Sunday morning, And we observe the Sabbath in this home. So.
And no one's ever grateful for what we have. Now we have to be grateful for what God gave us and be mindful of it. Everybody just takes it for granted.
Yes.
I'm very grateful for the work here at the church because I live with a lot of much older people in a community. And I mean, they don't have anything much to do. And someone said, well, how are you doing? And I said, I'm fine. I'm very busy.
Yes, I know. Yeah, poor barely can't even go out the door without somebody accompanying her.
And Barely is busy doing God's work.
She is writing lessons and reading lessons on Wednesday, and thank God she's doing that.
About her father's business.
About her father's business. So the storm may roar without me, as the hymn says.
Yeah.
Well, I was just thinking everybody is being forced to recognize the impractical, non-operative idol worship is not doing them any good. So
Yes, it's so true. And, you know, Mrs. Evans used to tell us, you will lose what you're not grateful for. And, you know, it's so true. I mean, you can, even like when you have your dishwasher break down and say, oh my gosh, what did I ever do when I didn't have a dishwasher? Just simple things like that. And she said she went to her practitioner once and just threw her coat on the chair. And this practitioner, who was an old-time good practitioner, Nana Ritchie, said, are you grateful for that coat? Mrs. Evans said, well, yeah. She said, well, then hang it up. And Mrs. Evans at that time, I think, was just a teenager, but she never forgot that. So what you're grateful for, you take care of, you cherish, and you won't ever lose it. And you also acknowledge it's coming from God. That's impersonalizing it. As a testimony was given on Wednesday about someone's husband, she'd impersonalized the qualities he was expressing, knowing they were coming from God. And therefore, you can never be separated from that. So you don't personalize the good. And that way you won't lose it. And so it is individually and as a nation. If we're not grateful for our freedom, for what God has given us, for Christianity, we will lose it. That's just the way it is. Not my opinion.
I like how there was some. I like what Matthew Henry says about what we're talking about. God will make us sensible of our necessary and constant dependence upon Him throughout all the links in the chain of second causes from first to last, so that we can at no time say, now we have no further occasion for God and His providence.
It's beautiful. Thank you.
Also, I was going to say, he has said Haggai is the first that appears under the character of a special messenger from heaven. After the Jews came back to Jerusalem, or the Promised Land, there were three prophecies. Haggai and Zerubbabel, and I can't remember the other one, but they were special. They were not the same as all the other prophets prior to their captivity. So I thought that was interesting too.
Yes, thank you. Did we answer what his clarion call is? Are we doing that?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it okay if I give a little bit of backdrop on Haggai?
Sure.
I was led to Jeremiah from a sentence that was printed in a article that I was reading, and this is Jeremiah 29:11. For I know the thoughts that I think toward you, saith the Lord, thoughts of peace and not of evil, to give you an expected end. And I thought that was just so beautiful, so I looked it up in Jeremiah 29. And it turns out that this is a message from God through Jeremiah to the people who went into captivity, who were taken into captivity in Babylon. And what's fascinating about it is that the message is that they're going to have prophets in Babylon, which was like Daniel and the three ones that were thrown into the fire, and that they were going to come through it in fine shape because they were going to stick to God. And what's fascinating is that the people that were left in Jerusalem, Jeremiah warned them not to go to Egypt because of the whole the defense towards what Babylon had done. And they didn't listen to him, and they actually kidnapped Jeremiah and took him to Egypt with him because Nebuchadnezzar had actually offered him a place in Babylon, Jeremiah that is. And he told his captain, who was overseeing Jerusalem, that anything that Jeremiah said, he had to follow those orders. So actually the Babylonians were following Jeremiah better than the Jews, but Jeremiah turned down the offer to go to Babylon, got taken to Egypt, and that was kind of the remnant that Haggai came back to, were not the whole of the people who didn't go into captivity because they had left town.
Thank you. Well, I thought this was interesting, something Spurgeon said about the awakening and the shaking of nations. I suppose there's nothing that can sleep so soundly as a church. But yet the Spirit of God still remaineth, and therefore churches go to be awakened. I mean that not only in part, but as a whole. A church may be quickened. The dullest professor, the most slovenly believer, the most captious and useless member of a church may yet be turned to a good account. I see them like a stack of faggots piled up dead and dry. Oh, for the fire. We will have a blaze out of them yet. So good for Spurgeon. So everyone will be awakened.
Right, like a sleeping giant.
A sleeping giant all around, all nations, everywhere.
As they say, only enthusiasm has God in it. So.
Thank you. Yes, that's what it is, the Greek God. Thank you. Okay, are we done with that?
Yes, I think we're good. The only thing the people told Haggai, and actually maybe I'll add it. We'll do the next question, then I'll add it. Question 2, what is the condition of the people after returning from captivity in Babylon? And one of the things in the first chapter is the people told, the response was, the time has not come to work on the temple, and the answer was, no, it's come. It's time.
Thank you. So what were they up to when Haggai got there?
Well, they had built the foundation. Within a year, they had built the foundation for the temple, but they got some opposition from the Persian court, and so that stopped the work. But then after the opposition was over, they just decided, well, we started taking care of our own houses and taking care of we'll just put, it'll be done eventually, but we'll just stop. This isn't the right time to continue the work. And so they still, even though the opposition stopped, they just didn't get back to what they had started to do. And so all their attempts to build up their lives and get things going in their own secular lives, everything was failing. Their crops, their cattle, or everything, they couldn't seem to move forward in any way, and they couldn't figure out why. And that's where Haggai came in and said, well, I can tell you why things are not working out.
Thank you. Does that sound familiar?
Very good.
Yeah. It's you're all starting from the wrong foundation, and well, of course it's going to fail.
Like our own life. So,
I thought that was fascinating when I read it. It just seems interesting. So you have sown much and bring in so little. So you work very, very hard, but somehow you're not getting what you think you're supposed to be getting.
Boy, how true. Thank you.
you're working on the wrong side, just like, work on the right side and plenty will come.
Yes, cast your fish.
Cast your net on the right side.
Excuse me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Matthew Henry said they neglected the building of God's house, that they might have more time and money for worldly affairs, that the punishment might answer to the sin, the poverty they thought to prevent by not building, God brought upon them for not building it.
Yes.
So it was, yeah.
Well, and we were taught here, the greater the opposition, the greater the good. We had tremendous opposition becoming an independent church with the law case, and we could have easily given up. And it was because of Mrs. Evans' fire in her that we didn't. And I think it's in Martha Wilcox's article, Evil Obsolete. She talks about opposition, and she actually says it's in your own thought. Well, everything is in our own thought. So it's so easy to just, he doesn't want me to do it. All these excuses. My husband's opposing me, doesn't want me to do all this church work. I'm too busy. My job needs my attention. My new baby needs my attention. They're just every excuse not to do it. We'll put it off till a better time. This isn't the right time. Again, Martha Wilcox, excuses. They are the road to hell.
I've had that temptation countless times, so I'll do it later. But one thing that's helped me so much is the Bible statement, my times are in thy hand. So when I remembered that statement from the Bible and looked back, what was trying to tell me, I'll do it later, it was obviously some selfish interest that wanted to gain priority. Well, the divine interests have the priority. And there's always time for doing them. So there's a sacrifice that needs to be made. In the case I'm talking about, the sacrifices is that of selfishness or other interests, or being redirected into a path that's really not why I'm here. It's not my purpose for being here. We talked about the purpose before. My times are in thine hand. Save me many times.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's good.
Haggai did not take no for an answer either. He told them that they were more to blame than their opponents, and then he kept rousing them out of their lethargy. I thought that was...
Thank you. More to blame than their opponents.
You're not a victim.
Yeah, you're not a victim. And if you face your opponents, what are you going to find out?
They have to anyway.
Well, hotter anyway, right?
Error is a coward before truth. But we just immediately submit to it. And we mustn't. And people who have succeeded throughout the years, they enjoy the challenge. They understand this is a principle, one of God's principles. You stand up to the opposition, you'll defeat it and find out it was just not the red dragon, but a paper dragon. This is why this work goes on. What we're facing is not the red dragon, seems like it, but it's a paper dragon.
It reminds me of something I heard from Mrs. Evans years ago. She says, bring it on. I like a good fight.
Yep. That was her attitude.
Well, and why not? Because the battle is the Lord's. Nothing is ever personal. And if we know that, and as Mrs. Eddy says in the textbook, love for God and man is the true incentive in both healing and teaching. If our love is strong, we won't be impressed by the opposition. Because what is the opposition trying to do anyway? It's just trying to mesmerize you into thinking that love for something other than God and man is better, more important, more powerful. And it's not.
Take you off the first commandment. Always go back to that. First commandment. What other gods are you going after?
So these guys who came back from Babylon needed to be re-educated. They had lost their love, or maybe they didn't have it as strong as it needed to be in the first place, having been born and raised in Babylon, most of them. They needed to be re-educated.
I read this humorous poem. It was under a commentary, Have You Considered Your Ways? Haggai 1. And it's this. Now I lay me down to sleep. I pray my Cuisinart to keep. I pray my stocks are on the rise, and that my analyst is wise. That all the wine is white, and that my hot tub's watertight. That racquetball won't get too tough, that all my sushi's fresh enough. I pray my cordless phone still works, that my career won't lose its perks. My microwave won't radiate, my condo won't depreciate. I pray my health club doesn't close, and that my money market grows. And if I go broke before I wake, I pray my Volvo they won't take.
Oh my gosh.
But isn't that how some people, and I know I'm sure my prayers used to be that way too. You pray for this complete protection over all your stuff. God, protect my stuff.
Shows where the priorities are.
Well, exactly. And then, besides the opposition they met, the other thing was that they were saying, compare, what good are you compared to Solomon's temple, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so why even bother? You're never going to build a temple like Solomon. And it was very interesting because Spurgeon spoke to this, and I mean, here he had a huge congregation, but he would be flagged with, well, what good are you? Think of all the great preachers that went before you. Think of what can you do? And you see, we get it too. Because I hear people say it. Oh, look at all the instantaneous healings and all the great churches. Don't we hear this?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Yeah.
Big time.
And it misses the whole point. It is worshiping stuff. It is worshiping organization. It is looking backwards instead of forwards. We need to live in the present. We need to look forward to the future. We need to learn the lessons of the past.
Make the most of today.
And make the most of today. It would what happened, there was maybe a time and place for all of that. I mean, I knew when Christian Science was in its heyday, a lot of Hollywood said they were scientists. Well, look where all of this is gone. So, and believe me, this is in no way, I'm certainly not in any way knocking what Mrs. Eddy did in her establishment and all the healings and all of that. But she even said, as time went on, the healings became much more difficult. And that quote from the 6th day of Revelation is something to the effect that when materia medica gets so big that healing in Christian Science would seem impossible. And that's what we're up against, it would seem, because everybody's running to the medical for solutions. And then if that happens, then it's not in the building of the churches, but in getting science and health out to mankind. So we focus on what we have to do. And I thought this was good. This was an A.W. Tozer. He says, Dear Lord, I refuse henceforth to compete with any of thy servants. They have congregations larger than mine, so be it. I rejoice in their success. They have greater gifts? Very well. That is not in their power nor in mine. I am humbly grateful for their greater gifts and my smaller ones. I only pray that I may use to thy glory such modest gifts as I possess. I will not compare myself with any, nor try to build up my self-esteem by noting where I may excel one or another in thy holy work. I purpose to pray for others and to rejoice in their prosperity as if it were my own. And indeed it is my own, if it is thine own. For what is thine is mine. And while one plants and another waters, it is thou alone that giveth the increase.
That's beautiful.
So, very true. We focus on what we have to do and shut out the other voices, this comparing or thinking what it used to be or whining about this and that. Its era is just taking you for a ride, and it will continue to tear you all apart if you continue with that kind of thinking, because it's godless. You're saying that God was present then and isn't present now. And while you're complaining about it, you're not doing what you should, as Jeremy just said. You live in the present, not in the past and not even in the future, except to expect only good in the future.
The reliable now?
Yes.
For one of the early workers said that. I want to say about this idea of waiting for the perfect time to do something. I remember, and it was around November of 2015, and I was getting the new website ready, and I just kept feeling like it wasn't perfect. And my practitioner asked me what was going on, and I told her I feel like it needs more work. And she just said, that's just anal magnetism. You will go on the first of the year. Oh, bye. So it ended up going on the 3rd, because that's when the new week started that time. But I was very grateful for that. So.
And so was I. And yes.
And the rest is history.
And the rest is history. And it is why we move lively. We don't wait till better times. We, as I say many times, we make hay while the sun shines. We've got now to work, and we must do this work. We don't wait till later.
And if not us, who?
Yeah.
And if not now, when?
Because that thought would have kept going, that it's not perfect, you know.
Oh, it's
I could still be saying it.
That's true. It's relentless. It'll never stop. There'll always be a better day. And we were also taught here that you put God's work first, and then you leave everything else. You know, coming to these Bible studies, and I'm so grateful because we have more and more coming. I think last week it was 100, or last time was
156.
No, it was 180 something. Then come on a Saturday morning to our Bible studies. Now, we're taught here, okay, you devote an hour and more with your study on Saturday morning to this, and you will find the rest of your day is so much better. It has never failed, that principle. Never failed. Because you devoted your time to talk about the things of God and to come together. It never fails. So, and that's true of watching everything else. You do that work and everything else works out. You don't do that work and then because I've been there as well. And it's not.
Yes, have to. It's just some work.
And it will always work because God made it that way. That is God's covenant. You pay attention to me, and I will take care of you. It's throughout the Bible. It is God's covenant. That's why it always works, and it always will work. We can have total faith in that principle.
Principle is God, and principle is orderly, punctual, everything in perfect order and arrangement every day.
Thank you.
Yes.
And in addition, principle is love. It will always be. It will always be good for us.
I believe it was in Revelation interpreted by Reverend Crafter that I read in reference to second church built in Jerusalem not being quite as fancy as Solomon's, was that it was stated that maybe Solomon's temple had more gold and glitz to it, but don't worry, the new temple will have more God in it. And I think that goes to show what was said about Hollywood and all these famous people who were Christian scientists with a mother church. So then why is it a little church in Plainfield with common people is the one that's trying to keep true Christian science alive?
Thank you.
I want to add on to what Mike said about the temple. The new temple lasted 600 years after it was built.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, they said it was glorious. And God keeps doing new things. You know, what was done at Mrs. Eddy's time and then what was done now, they're different. And even what was done when Mrs. Evans was here is different. Every time is different. It should be. We shouldn't just be repeating the same old things.
We should be making progress.
Yes.
Individually and collectively, we should be making progress.
It's the law of God, so.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they had opposition back in Haggai's day. Well, we have opposition today, don't we?
Yeah, different kinds, still opposition.
Different kinds of opposition.
But as far as the Hollywood people, we have to accept Mr. Young because he went to headquarters and exposed what was going on. Forgot what his first name was. He was from Hollywood.
The voice of the horse.
Alan Young.
Oh, Alan Young. Oh, right. Mm-hmm. Alan Young, not Bicknell. I didn't know what you meant at first.
Oh, I see.
So.
Robin the point is,
oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, but the point isn't whether you're rich or poor. The point is are you following God? I mean, that was one of the things about Babylon, which the people that were taken into captivity there was that in Revelation it talks about Babylon being the zenith of corruptness of civil government and totally controlling in all worldly things. And that's what they had to resist when they were there, to stick with God in the midst of that.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and one thing I wanted to mention, too, and Karen was listing, you know, all the things God supplies us with to get the work done. And there was a long list, and certainly health, because some people who struggle with health, you have to realize if you're getting up to do God's work, He's going to energize you and enable you to do. You rise in the Spirit to resist all that is unlike good. You don't rise out of human will, but in the Spirit of God to energize yourself to do this work. It will work. I promise you. We've had countless demonstrations of this. And the other that I don't want to fail to mention is supply. And this is in this 2 chapters of Haggai 2. God tells them, I will give you all that you need, including a right supply. And I've been so grateful. Our church, all these years, have always had what it is needed. During the law case, Bruce, we had to raise
$268,000. And we didn't have any single wealthy benefactors that dumped a big load of money on us. It came from countless many small contributions consistently over a period that exceeded 10 years. But we always had enough.
We've always had enough to keep it going, and that includes people. You know, we got down to the bare bones not long ago, but we've had enough to keep it going. And what do we need? More than we need what we enough, right? We've had enough.
We need 12 disciples.
12 disciples, and now we have many more of you out there, and you are disciples. of Christ and of Mary Baker Eddy. Don't ever forget that. I mean, and as much as you walk in their precepts, as much as you're willing to, and to take up the cross.
The number one thing that we need is the love for God and His ways. And that's something that resides in the heart in each and every one of us. And thank God for this church, that the fact that it is there can be awakened, brushed off, dust off, and brought out into light, and brought into useful service for God.
Thank you. Well,
that is something since coming to the church that I have grown more and more, and I'm so grateful for, is that the love for God and my purpose, and I've never felt that as like to the degree that I do now as a member of this church, and I'm so grateful for how it's come about through all my practitioner and everything. It's the most important thing for anyone to realize why they're here is to fulfill God's purpose. And that's why it stopped me from looking around and comparing myself. I would often do that. And that really has pretty much stopped, because nobody can do what God has given me to do. What He's given somebody else to do, that's there, but only God, I can only do it. What I'm supposed to do, I'm the one that's supposed to do it. And same for everybody. And that's such a closeness, that relationship with God is, where else can you find that? But in science and in this, it's just been a wonderful blessing.
That's
And if you try to do something for somebody else, then your spot is not being filled.
That's right.
And when we all do what God has for us individually to do, we work together in harmony.
Yes.
And we accomplish incredible things.
It's wonderful to witness.
It is, isn't it?
There's rarely any trouble or friction, because everyone has accepted what Karen just explained. And there's a sense of peace. And also, when you come up with things that you feel you need to do, they're wonderful things that are needed because God is speaking to you. And it improves the whole.
And that is what makes a spiritual organization. And that is what Mrs. Eddy established as her church. And her definition of church defines what Karen just described. And that is why spiritual organizations prosper. Human organizations do not, because they cannot. Only to the extent they embody a spiritual organization and follow God individually and collectively. So that is a very important point, and it's one that we as a church had to learn. It's a lesson that we learned the hard way, but sometimes the hard way is the only way to learn. Because we were forced out of the organization. It wasn't our choice. And it was painful at the time, but we saw a glimpse of what God was doing. And we were provided with books that we hadn't ever seen before, Carpenter's Spiritual Footsteps and Spiritual Precepts, and books that described to us what we needed to do. And it was God working, so clearly God working. And we see now that we've been entrusted with something very holy, very special. And it's our job to never let it go back to a human organization.
And when Karen spoke about being chosen, it might seem like we're chosen, but actually we're just open to God's plan. So I don't know. It's definitely a two-way street. It's not as if some people are chosen and others aren't. Anyone is.
Everyone has the opportunity.
Yes, that is. Everyone has this opportunity. It's really up to you. Do you hear the calling? That's why I love that song the quartet sings.
Is it me, Lord?
Is it me, Lord? Yes. I hear you calling in the night.
Yes.
Is it me, Lord? So that's our position. You hear God calling you in the night. You hear him telling you the things that you need to do to help. Maybe it's your neighbor. Maybe it's something in the church. Who knows what it is? In your business, it can be many different things. But you hear that calling and you follow it. So you're chosen to the extent that you are this one with God and you feel the calling. And it's a beautiful song. I think of it often.
And then, are you willing to overcome the opposition?
Yeah, right. Because you will have it.
Because you'll have opposition if you are willing to accept the call. And if you're willing to defeat the opposition, it can be of great service to mankind. And I just want to say one more thing. This idea of serving God, serving mankind, it's not a weird thing. I mean, this, we serve God in our businesses. We serve God in our communities. We serve God by being love, by loving mankind and doing what is right. It's not a weird thing. It is the most normal and natural thing that could ever happen to us.
So I had a feeling we would not get to the Babylonian woman today, but that is for another day. And I think I'll just end with this, something very beautiful we were given a long time ago in Pulpit and Press. Perchance some of you may say, the evidence of spiritual verity in me is so small that I am afraid. I feel so far from victory over the flesh that to reach out for a present realization of my hope savors temerity. Because of my own unfitness for such spiritual animus, my strength is naught, and my faith fails. O thou weak and infirm of purpose, Jesus said, be not afraid. And then, quote, what if the little rain should say, so small a drop as I can ne'er refresh a drooping earth, I'll tarry in the sky. End quote. Is not a man metaphysically and mathematically number one, a unit, and therefore whole number, governed and protected by his divine principle, God? You have simply to preserve a scientific, positive sense of unity with your divine source and daily demonstrate this. Then you will find that one is as important a factor as duodecillions in being and doing right, and thus demonstrating deific principle. A dewdrop reflects the sun. Each of Christ's little ones reflects the infinite one, and therefore is the seer's declaration true, that one on God's side is a majority. A single drop of water may help to hide the stars or crown the tree with blossoms. Mary Baker Eddy.
Everyone counts.
Yes.
Everyone, each one of you counts a great deal.
So consider your ways.
And when God calls in the middle of the night, answer.
Yeah, answer. And when when the opposition tries to knock you for a loop, keep going. Keep going. Don't stop. And you will be crowned with success. As you're finding out, all of you.